And we're back with our political panel. Ruth Marcus is the deputy editorial page editor and columnist at the Washington Post. Reihan Salam is the executive editor with the National Review. Mark Leibovich is the chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine and a CBS News contributor. Ruth, I want to start with you. The responses to this explosion in New York overnight, Donald Trump got off the plane, immediately said a bomb went off. Turns out he was right. Hillary Clinton said we got to wait for the details. Is that a frame through which we should look at the two candidates?
I think it's actually pretty telling. He turned out to be right, but might not have. I think that, look, I'm a fact girl, so I think the response, I'd like to wait for the facts until I comment, is always a good idea. I think both of them could have behooved them to express some concern for the victims, which seems to be something that's forgotten in all of this.
Yeah, Reihan, I want to ask you about this op-ed by Secretary Robert Gates. Attacked both candidates, not attacked, sorry, criticized both candidates for their weaknesses. Hillary Clinton not trustworthy enough. Donald Trump said he was thin-skinned, didn't have the temperament for the job. Does this matter? Does he raise important questions about this? And was Donald Trump's calling him a clown, does that matter, or is that just what we're used to from Donald Trump?
My sense is that Donald Trump's style, the braggadocio and what have you, is basically priced in for voters. What I saw happen this week was something very different and very interesting. If you look at the surveys, it looks as though Hillary Clinton's support with the Obama coalition is softening. Mm-hmm. If you look at younger voters, millennial voters, it's softening pretty drastically. Even if you look at, for example, younger black men, it seems that there's some weakness here. Whereas if you look at Donald Trump, there's certainly what folks in many media outlets talk about. They talk about the birther controversy, among other things, which I'm sure we'll talk more about now. But what has he been doing? He has proposed a new social program for working mothers. He went on the Dr. Oz show, which, by the way, is a show that's watched by many of the voters he's seeking to reach, and he praised Medicaid and suggested that we ought to expand the Medicaid program further. So when you think about trying to get through one channel, the people who read the Wall Street Journal editorial page, let's say, and then trying to reach another channel, think about the married white women in a state like Pennsylvania, the people that he hasn't been able to reach, the people who've been reluctant to join his campaign. It's not obvious to me that he hasn't done a decent job of doing an end run around certain kinds of media criticism and reaching those people.
Yeah, and the polls have tightened a little. And Mark, then if we're picking up on Reihan's point about those kinds of voters, the reintroduction of the idea that for 5 years Donald Trump was the advocate for the idea that Barack Obama was not born in the United States. Does that matter to those kinds of voters? Is that why he finally came out and said, yes, he was born here?
I think it does matter to those kinds of voters. I mean, I think the lead that Hillary Clinton opened up in August was a lot of sort of softening Republicans. I mean, Reihan mentioned softening of the Obama coalition. I mean, I think a lot of these were sort of squishy Republicans who would listen to someone like Susan Collins, who said that she wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. There's like this divide between Republicans who actually know who Robert Gates is and those who don't. I mean, he's obviously a very well-respected figure in the Republican Party, or at least the establishment of the Republican Party. I was actually somewhat surprised by how critical he was of Hillary Clinton, who he apparently was an ally, or I thought had been an ally of pretty closely during the Obama years when they both served together. I do think that the kind of language he used, he said beyond repair, I think were the exact words, is the kind of damning language that does sort of put the fear of, actually pulling the lever for him into a lot of the suburban Republicans in Philadelphia or Cleveland, what have you.
One thing that's been interesting, Ruth, in the Clinton conversations you have with their staffers is for the last several weeks they've said, we realize we have to be out there talking about solutions. Now that's been interrupted by her comments about the half of the Trump supporters being in the basket of deplorables, her health issues. Now other things are getting in the way. What does that tell you, though, that this late in the campaign they're feeling like we still have to make the case for Hillary Clinton?
And she still feels like she has to make the case. That's part of what she's thinking about in the debates. It has been impossible. It's actually impossible even for Donald Trump's policy, now that it's coming, to break through Donald Trump. And so she's had a hard time either talking about individual policies in this campaign, but even larger, talking about the larger vision that she has for the country, and for getting people to like her / trust her this is a big challenge in the debate, in addition to kind of simultaneously trying to fact check Donald Trump.
I want to get back to the debate in a minute and the question of whether one can fix one's liabilities in a debate. But Reihan, on this question of Donald Trump's view on the president's birth, he has asked us, and his campaign has asked us, to look back at his business career for an idea of how he'd be president. Look at his judgment on foreign policy, on the various things he may or may not have said. They now want this not to be a conversation, the question of the president's birth. But you can't just say it's over.
Oh, I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump talked about this, raised questions about this for many years. But again, as I suggested earlier, the thing is that this may well be very relevant and motivating for some voters. It is not clear to me that those voters for whom this is a pressing and important issue are voters that Donald Trump was ever going to be able to win regardless. Now, let's look at a state like Florida. In Mark Leibovich's newspaper, the New York Times, you have a new report on survey findings in Florida. What you see is that, back in 2008, Hillary Clinton was well to the right of Barack Obama on some immigration issues. Now she is well to his left in terms of how she talks about them, how she talks about deportation relief, and much else. Yet, if you look at Hispanic voters, Barack Obama the last time around won 60% of those voters. Hillary Clinton is well behind Barack Obama's mark among Hispanic voters. Now, they're not going to Donald Trump, but it seems like a lot of them are demotivated. Yeah. And this is a pattern you see not just in Florida, but many other states besides. And so a state like Florida that many people assumed, because of Hillary Clinton's big push on immigration and amnesty and other issues, would be in the bag for her. She is struggling there. So, is she struggling with the kind of voters for whom talk of the birther controversy is really meaningful? Yes. And actually, it may well make sense that by magnifying this, by talking about this, that could help motivate some of those voters. But, again, is that going to get her over the bar? We'll see.
I'm just going to disagree with Reihan on the question of whether this is an issue that could affect voters who would otherwise be for Trump. I think there's two. First of all, it is astonishing that we are debating this this late in the game. It's something that Donald Trump, if he didn't put it away in 2011, should have put away way earlier this cycle. And the notion that Kellyanne Conway, you asked her about why Donald Trump was lying about the president's birth and his suggestion that he wasn't born in America for the last 5 years. She said, you'll have to ask him. That means case is not closed, and definitely. And so I think the voters who can be affected by this are voters who they might not be voters who would go for Trump, but they're voters who might have thought about staying home in the polls, or they're voters who might have been
By the way, I agree with
tempted by Gary Johnson or Jill Stein, and now get enraged and scared about the notion of Trump being president.
That's pretty much my view as well.
Mark, I hear two things. I hear on the right people saying this is the press obsessed with this question of Obama's birth to not cover policy that Trump's actually talking about. On the left, I hear don't fall for Donald Trump talking about birther things. Pay attention to the foundation and other things. What's the right way to look at this?
Well, I would say, look, the notion that Donald Trump settled this debate for like however many years, and we're still, when was this ever a debate? I mean, it was a debate on the fringes in certain sectors. Donald Trump, has been well documented, spent 5 years doing it. Whether voters respond to it or not, it's appalling. It's appalling on its face to actually watch this argument play out. It's edifying to no one. I mean, the facts are very, very clear. And, just speaking as one human being, maybe I'm in the media, so I'm suspect. I find it appalling. I think many people do. Whether it plays out electorally or not, I think it's clear that we make clear, what we're talking about here.
Ruth, let's move to the debates. Everybody's saying, Reince Priebus said, the biggest political event in the world. Is that good, by the way, just to have that much focus on a single thing?
It is what it is. And I think look, to the extent that, Donald Trump is helping to generate the biggest ratings ever, the more voters pay attention, the more voters are engaged, even if they haven't been engaged beforehand, the better off we are. And it's actually why it's really important that we have 3 debates, not 1 debate, so that people aren't affected by one single thing. You can clean up, you can go back to issues.
Reihan, what should we be looking for in the debates?
Well, one thing I'll just throw out there is that back in 2012, Bill Clinton at the Democratic National Convention felt like it was really important that Republicans wanted to cut the Medicaid program. The fact that Donald Trump now is saying he wants to expand it is just completely not an issue, and that's pretty amazing, and that tells you something about the debates. In the first debate between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney was able to do an end run around a lot of the media conversation about his campaign and connect directly with voters and present a very different face. Now, I'm not sure if Donald Trump is capable of doing that, but imagine if he does. Imagine if he shows the many ways that he appears to be not like other Republicans, for better or for worse, by the way. That's something where he's going to have a direct channel to an audience that's been hearing all kinds of messages about him. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I don't have I just have a sense, and I could be wrong, so I'm not in the room, but I don't think Donald Trump is just sort of crashing on the details of his Medicaid policy just as he prepares for this debate. I mean, I think what's exhilarating to him is that this is a great show. He sees himself foremost as a showman. He thinks that he can handle the stage, handle the moment, and that'll be that. I mean, what the Clinton campaign has said over and over and over again is that, look, 100 million people could watch this. This is a moment to actually get very basic facts and very basically, ads about Donald Trump's history, my own credibility out there. And I think to some degree they see it as kind of almost a writ large version of their convention condensed into a couple of hours.
All right, Mark, we're going to have to leave it there. It's a little more than a week away till that first debate, and thanks all of you for being here. We'll be right back in a moment.